Okay, good afternoon and welcome. It's really good to be back. We've had a couple of months off doing these LinkedIn Live sessions, learning with Luann and Laura. My name is Luann Wise. If we haven't met before, if we haven't crossed paths, I'm a marketing consultant, have been running my own business now for just over 10 years, having spent time working in advertising agencies and as an in-house marketer as well. I use the term, and I know that we've discussed this, Laura, before, I use the term T-shaped marketer in that I consider that I'm quite a generalist with a broad background, but the part of the team, my specialism is the world of social media.
And hi, everybody. I'm Laura Chamberlain. I'm a professor in marketing at Warwick Business School. I'm a researcher, educator, but I'm also really passionate about bridging the gap between academia and industry, which is why we have created these sessions. It's so important to me that the world of academia and industry talk to one another, share insights, and also learn from each other. And Luann and I met how many years ago now, Luann? A long time ago.
Six or seven, I think.
I'd say more, maybe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, because I've been at work now for 5 and a bit years, maybe 6
So
years.
eight or
Yeah,
nine.
so we've known each other for quite a while anyway. And we get on very, very well. And we always love talking about all things marketing. So we decided to set up this series to have conversations, hopefully spark wider debate, share our insights, but also to meet you and hopefully share things with you as well.
Thanks for joining us over lunchtime and listening to us chat. There's a few people saying hello, so good to see some familiar names in there as well. Thank you for coming back and joining us. And so the topic that we've picked for today's discussion, and we'd love your thoughts on this and your feedback, we're just going to kind of talk about it really, is about consumer confidence. And this was because I've read a few things. We're both always reading and swapping articles, but this was a few things that were starting to come up in Marketing Week and the drum around consumer confidence. And some of those headlines were, we're a whisker away from the lowest ever score, and consumer confidence is plunging to the lowest ever level. And also some reports around how brands, organizations are reacting to this, whether it's they're okay with it, they're feeling confident, whether they're actually laying off staff as well. We don't want this session to actually be all the negative feelings around consumer confidence. What we want to do is kind of just share our thoughts and some advice on what we as marketers need to do as part of this as well. So something to explore, consumer confidence.
Yeah, and it's such a tricky one because I feel that we have just come through the pandemic, if we're through yet. I mean, can we say that yet? I don't even know. And everybody's had such a difficult time. And we've had almost a period of slight optimism where we felt like things may be returning to normal or figuring out what the new normal looks like. Yet now in the UK, particularly, we have the cost of living crisis, which is very concerning, and it's a serious issue. And it kind of feels, from a consumer's point of view, a little bit relentless. If you know what I mean. Like we've just come out of one thing and now we're in another. And I think there's some really interesting things to think about in terms of consumer confidence, because we've seen lots of changes to consumer behaviors, and there's some things we know around consumer confidence, but also about human beings in general. So generally, when we are in a crisis or an adverse situation, there are some things that really come to the fore. Stuff like the human tendency for uncertainty, avoidance. We want to have certainty in our lives, and inevitably, when we have like a crisis or a confidence dip, uncertainty is the key watchword. And so consumers will behave differently because they want to avoid this uncertainty, or they want to compensate for the uncertainty. So an example, when the COVID pandemic hit in the UK, everybody went mad and started stockpiling. Not everybody. Some people were socially responsible. But there was lots of things about all the things that were missing from the supermarket shelves because people had started stockpiling behavior. And that's a classic knee-jerk reaction to this kind of feelings of uncertainty. And then behaving in ways to try and reduce that uncertainty, to make yourself feel safe. I think in the UK it was toilet paper was one of the big things. Flour was impossible to get hold of. Everybody started baking banana bread. What were the other things? I can't remember what else was people stockpiling in the UK.
It was food, wasn't it? And quite interestingly, we were clearing out our cupboards last week and had like bread flour in there, and everything's out of date now. So I'm sure that everyone that did stockpile this stuff didn't use it and can't use it.
Well, my husband laughed at me because I had a small, what I call my Brexit stash, which then became really handy in the pandemic. So but I didn't stockpile during the pandemic. I have to say that. But it's all around this idea of wanting to avoid uncertainty, and also in times of crisis, there's something about time that changes as well. People don't plan for the future. Everything becomes a shorter time scale because of this uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen. So what we call our long-term orientation becomes massively reduced because we don't want to plan into the future and think too far ahead, because we've got to deal with the problem that's happening now. From a marketer's point of view, there are some implications around knowing that these are changes that happen in consumers. But on the flip side, there's other things that happen. So when it was the economic crisis from 2008, 2009, we saw a massive rise in affordable luxuries. So people weren't buying things like big expensive holidays or expensive luxury goods. They were buying things like a designer lipstick. So something that was still a luxury that they could treat themselves with, because that's something that self-gift giving is something that's really important. But it was something that was in the affordable category of the luxury market. So things like Chanel lipsticks saw a massive spike, whereas obviously people were not able to afford to buy, Chanel suits or handbags or the big ticket items. So there's some really interesting things that happen in terms of the way consumers behave around times where consumer confidence is knocked, and I think there's a lot there that we can draw on from a marketing point of view. Sorry, I've just gone off on one already.
Well, I think this is, it comes back to, whenever we have these discussions, it always comes back to the fundamentals of, marketing basics and understanding your consumer. And I think that what has happened over the last 2.5 years is that actually we've almost had to wake up and realize that things are changing, and we can't, we have to keep on changing and keep on reviewing, because this period of uncertainty has been different, and we've had to make changes and been forced to make changes, rather than, we've always done it this way and it's not broken. Actually, consumer feelings, behaviors change so massively that, we got kicked into action and to make those changes and to understand the fundamentals again.
Yeah, I really think that's something I'm definitely seeing with marketers, that this return back to basics approach in terms of, okay, take stock, what are we actually looking at and thinking about? But what you just said was really interesting there, and it made me think, well, consumers have always changed quite a lot. And actually pre-pandemic, were we resting on our laurels a little bit? From a marketing point of view now I'm talking about. And actually, should we be, a marketing 101 basic is this idea of being responsive and understanding your consumers. And perhaps because we've had so much turbulence and change, of course it's been because of the circumstances around us, but actually, perhaps people were resting on their laurels a little bit and hadn't really thought about how to keep on top of understanding their customers and their needs and all those things that we would consider to be basic things. And perhaps in many ways, it's a good thing that people have been forced to think about their customers in that sense, and moving forward. So it may mean that we see more agility in the marketing world, as in we won't go back to normal, where normal was perhaps resting on our laurels, maybe. I don't know. It depends on the industry.
Victoria's just kind of put, life has been a roller coaster for such a long time. At what point does it become normal? But I was just thinking back to, change. And actually, sometimes when we as marketers had to do things differently, it was because of we had to, like GDPR. What was that, 2018? And that, we had to, and we all lived through it. And that changed how we thought about permissions and opt-ins and email marketing and things like that. and sometimes all of that was dictated by legislation or other things, whereas actually the last 2 years has been about bigger world events, not about our industry activity or legislation, or it's what's happening in the the bigger world that we have no control or influence over as individuals or businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. And the roller coaster. Maybe I don't want to say this necessarily, but maybe the roller coaster is the new normal.
Yeah.
Maybe that's how we should think about it. And one of the thoughts that just sparked in my mind then was, I do a lot of work with students and young people, early career marketers, and maybe this agility, this ability to respond and react and not be fazed by change is actually one of these kind of soft skills that we are going to look for in marketing is the fact that we embrace the roller coaster.
Yeah.
maybe we're just okay with riding the roller coaster and not being fazed by it. And I think maybe that's something in terms of the marketing mindset, the marketing skill set that we all need to develop as marketers, is something that maybe is a key learning from this as well. And I don't know how we teach that, or how we maybe that's something that we can explore.
Maybe it's not that it's part of that annual marketing plan update and refresh that stays in a drawer, that actually it needs to be something that's part of the weekly, monthly agenda to, what's the context that we're living in and what's happening. But it's about the emotional side, isn't it? It's not just the behaviors of cutting back on spend or the luxuries. It's about how people are thinking and feeling about this. And I think those emotional factors have come out so much more over the past couple of years, that we need to consider those in our thinking and planning and activity. We were exploring quite early on in our research about what was the initial impact of COVID, and one of those findings that came out in the qual interviews was, it doesn't feel right to be promoting or anything. Actually, we need to be showing empathy and understanding and where people can get support from. So I think that's shifted some of our messaging as well as is the context of the change.
Oh yeah, I mean 100%. And I think for me there were some really interesting examples across the COVID pandemic, and I don't want to just talk about COVID, because I know everybody doesn't want to talk about COVID anymore. But it all feeds in together, and I think the lessons that we've learned from that are really important in terms of what we can then draw through, as you say, to connect with customers on this emotional level. And I think there were some really nice examples of brands and organizations that really thought about how to connect with customers. The ones that come to mind, there was a Waitrose ad, Waitrose and John Lewis and Partners ad that went up onto their socials and on online, which was about how they had kept daily essentials aside for their for our NHS heroes, and they really sort of captured that mood of the time, but also this kind of public giving that was happening, even though we couldn't give anything apart from clapping on our doorsteps to these people. It was really sort of acknowledging that, and there were lots of examples of things like that happened during the pandemic. But you're right, I think emotions are so important. Acknowledging customer emotions, understanding what they're feeling, because at human basic level, emotions drive human behavior. And if you're really worried about something, or you're scared, or you have concerns, and you're feeling the cost of living crisis is really hitting you and your family really hard, knowing that that's acknowledged in some way goes a really long way. It's not that you're trying to fix the problem for people, because maybe brands can't, but it's that acknowledgement and understanding that that's what's going on with customers is so important.
Yeah. In the chat, this is great. Mr. Jones, hello, we do need to catch up. You've put in there that you've reduced your creative test and learn campaign program sprints from 30 to 10 days. Yeah. I'd love to hear, what the impact of that is as well. But yeah, just it's about being more agile, isn't it? Going back from, were we resting on our laurels? I don't know, but maybe this just gave us a bit of a kick to being more agile.
But I think things change so quickly as well. And I think partly because of digital, the world that we live in, things are changing so fast in the world and for customers, that this agility and this ability to respond and really have a view on what's going on in the world is so important. So yeah, I think there's a lot of things there that we're definitely seeing marketers changing the way that they're operating. So thanks for that comment.
And then just to kind of explore, so we know it's about consumer behavior and they're at the heart of everything that we're doing, but in terms of how businesses are responding to this, do you think there's any criteria or considerations that are different for a small business versus a large business, a B2B, a B2C? Is there any nuances around how businesses respond to these changes? Or not?
Yes and no. I'm going to give a classic student answer. It depends. If there are any of my students or ex-students watching this, they will start laughing because we always have it depends. Yeah, of course it depends. I think B2C, B2B, we're all people at the end of the day. And I think that is one of the biggest things that particularly the work we've done, Luann, as well, around talking to B2Bs and working with marketers in the B2B space. It's not that different because we're still talking about people. So all the things to do with emotions, concerns and stuff, it's still really relevant. And I think people in B2B can sort of feel like they're really different. And of course there are differences between B2B and B2C. I'm not wanting to say that there aren't, but there are some fundamental marketing principles that cross over. And it's important not to lose sight of those as well. Size of business is a tricky one because you can, in my view, agility comes with being small a lot of the time. So, but then resource comes from being large. So, so it's often a balanced payoff. There's no ideal. And I think in that sense, it's about thinking about where your strengths lie as an organization, and that if you or even actually where your weaknesses are. If you're a very large organization which impedes your ability to be agile, that is an area that I would strongly suggest an organization looks at, is how can you bring agility into your day-to-day operations and what you're doing so that you can respond better. I don't have a magic money tree to shake for small businesses who need more resource, unfortunately. But
and Roger's just put something else, fascinating in here around issue with B2B is the number of SMEs going bust, and the numbers are going to be shocking. And you need to consider risk regarding credit terms. And I think, Laura, last week we were saying about how the FSB and other organisations have reported, how close to the wire some small businesses are now because their cash reserves have gone, and with the cost of living crisis and prices going up, and do we pass those on? It's a massive risk.
Yeah, it is. And I joke then about the magic money tree, and I don't want to make light of it because it is really serious, and it is a big issue. And I think you're right. Unfortunately, we're going to see a lot of movement in terms of companies that can't afford to remain active, and we're going to see a lot of shake-up in markets because of that. But to try and put a positive note on it, that means it's a land of opportunity. That means that hopefully in the future there will be space for new entrants into markets, people, entrepreneurs to start new organizations, new companies, new ideas. It's just tough. It's just really tough at the moment, especially for SMEs.
But not just SMEs. There's reports all the time. My LinkedIn feed is full of kind of job offers being rescinded because there's hiring, halts on, and one of the articles that came out was Klarna, the finance organization, the buy now, pay later, have made staffing cuts because of consumer confidence. And that's, again, one of those behaviors, isn't it, of the buy now, pay later, affordable luxuries, which I guess if we were looking at it, pricing is one of the biggest issues. If we're talking about marketing mix and what organizations need to think about is its price.
Yeah, and it's a massive tension, right? Because of everything that's going on in the world. I mean, we haven't even mentioned the war in Ukraine yet.
Yeah.
We've got supply chain issues. We've got costs going up. I don't want to mention it, but Brexit obviously still has an impact in that sense as well. And there's just so much going on in the world that means that across many different sectors, prices are having to rise. Yet we know that consumers are entering into or have entered into a cost of living crisis. And so this is one of the key tensions as marketers that we have to think about. And again, there's no magic wand answer to this. I can't say this is what every organization should do. But I think it's about thinking through how to navigate these competing issues in a responsible and reactive manner. And I know you've probably got some some thoughts on how what things that organizations should think about in that regard.
Yeah, there's one topic, and I'm just going to read out because I did my homework, as I always do when we're
Gold
talking,
star,
Laura, because I
Luann.
always feel like I have to. And I'll share these links in the chat afterwards. But it was a Harvard Business Review paper called "How to Market in a Downturn," and it's actually dated April 2009. So probably still in that financial crisis. But there was one paragraph at the beginning of it. It's a great article. It talks about segmentation variables, and we could probably sit here all afternoon and go through it. But there was one paragraph that I really liked that said, in frothy periods of national prosperity, marketers may forget that rising sales aren't caused by clever advertising and appealing products alone. Purchases depend on consumers having disposable income, feeling confident about their future, trusting in business and the economy, and embracing lifestyles and values that encourage consumption. So for me, it's the topic that you've been talking about this morning, and we talked about last time was trust, brand values and alignment. And you said we hadn't mentioned Ukraine. There is also, as much as the cost of living crisis is pressing, even Prince William said it in the Jubilee on Saturday night, didn't he, that the climate change is still so front of mind. So we've got to balance all of these things as well. But
it feels like a lot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the other thing
Yeah.
from a consumer's point of view. It's and this and this and this and this, and it's
Yeah.
Again, we don't want this to be all doom and gloom, but it does just feel that there's some really enormous things happening in the world at the moment, which could seem quite overwhelming in many senses. But yeah, trust for me, trust is the key thing. And how you communicate trust and you encourage customers to trust you. There's a variety of ways that you can do that. But thinking about what you said about products there as well, for me, is interesting because it depends on the sector. But I think customers are going to spend their money in different ways. So you're going to have, in the cost of living crisis, you're going to have customers who are really going to have to pare back and can't afford very much at all. You'll have people who will be okay, be comfortable, but not doing anything excessive. And you'll have inevitably the higher end of customers who sort of weather the storm comfortably, as it were. And I think understanding what's important to customers then becomes really key. So for that middle group, if you were talking about products, people are still going to buy things. That middle group of customers and the high end group I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about the unfortunate and really sad situation where people are really, really struggling. But people are going to look for brands that they trust, so they know are authentic, brands that have delivered. Legacy brands are going to become really important, brands who are leaders or have been in the market for a long time, who've weathered storms previously. They're still around, they're still, that says a lot to consumers in this time. And people are going to want products that are durable. That are going to last. If they're going to spend their money, they want to know that they're getting the maximum bang for their buck, as it were. And so they don't want things to break, or they want things to last. That kind of thing will become increasingly important. Or the guarantees, warranties, things that organizations can offer their customers as reassurance. So my little boy is turning 2 next week, and Yes, feel free to congratulate me, everybody. I've made it 2 years of
You've made
parenting
it.
so far. So far.
What a roller coaster. That's an additional roller coaster item, isn't it?
Yeah. Ooh, becoming a mum in the pandemic, that's a whole different LinkedIn live. But we're going on holiday, and so we're taking him on his first plane ride. We've bought him a Kindle Fire. Now, I am not one of those parents who is anti-screen time for my child. It is, I don't plonk him in front of the TV, a million hours a day or anything like that. He just is allowed screen time. So we've bought him a Kindle Fire for the flight, because a 4-hour flight with a 2-year-old is not fun in anybody's book. So we need some distraction. But the great thing about that, and I'm not a massive fan of Amazon personally, but they offer a 2-year no quibble. If it breaks, if he throws it on the floor, if he does anything to it, they will just replace it. And that's the kind of thing, obviously Amazon have scale, they can afford to do things like that, but that's the kind of thing that makes you think, I'm going to buy that product over a competitor's, because I have that guarantee and I have that safety, and the likelihood of him throwing it out of the plane window is quite, I'm joking, obviously plane windows don't come open, but you know what I mean. It's quite high. So yes, it's things like that become really important, I think. Random anecdote there from my life, sorry.
It's the additional services you can offer. Roger, again, I agree. A client asks for a guarantee on ROI. No, you can't guarantee some things. But it is about thinking about your service proposition. And one of mine is that actually I'm going to try and stick as much as I can to online training delivery, because it is more cost effective for me. I know how much money I'm now not spending on travel and fuel and the car and overnight accommodation and snacks on the road. So if I can deliver that, and also the training time for my clients, because there's a very different between an hour on screen versus 2 hours travel time either way, and that's a huge part of my day. So I think there are things that we can think about, and actually COVID and everything is helped us think differently and deliver differently as well, rather than the norm. Yes, this session is being recorded, so it will be available, and we'll include some links. And I don't own a pair, but it made me reminisce when I saw another article in Marketing Week about Dr. Martens and how they have said that they are confident about weathering this low confidence and what's going to come up. They are increasing their prices, but they know that their customers see it as an investment purchase. And
that's a great example of what I was just talking about. And durability is their thing, right? That's absolutely what.
I lived in a pair for about 3 years, I think, didn't take the things off. And now I'm kind of thinking, actually, maybe I need another pair. You can always have enough shoes. But there's all those factors to come into account. But those factors, the trust, the brand values, the reassurance, they're not a quick win. They're not a one social media post or one email out to your clients. This is, weathering this next level of uncertainty that's not going to disappear quickly, has got to be ongoing. It's not just a one hit message about something,
but also communicating that to your customers, right? I mean, Dr. Martens sell shoes. You wouldn't have thought that there would be a natural reason for them to talk about the cost of living crisis to their customers. And it's really interesting that they have, and they've decided to communicate this to their customers. And they've not done it in a we're so great, we're so amazing way. It's just, we're here, we're confident, this is our position, and this is why. And I think there's something quite nice about that. The difficulty then, of course, comes if everybody does the same thing, then there's no true voice talking about it. So it's about finding a way to communicate and resonate with your customers in a way that's meaningful. Or Dr. Martens is a great example, actually, because like you said, made me think, oh, maybe I should invest in a pair, maybe I should get a pair, maybe my next pair of shoes will be
it.
But they will have consumers who used to be customers that don't currently, so they might be trying to bring some of those back in, and there's a nostalgia piece around DMs as well, for older consumers like you and I, Luann. I'm sure they have a slightly younger target demographic these days, but well, maybe not, I don't know, but I think there is a lot there around just thinking about what's appropriate for them to say and talk about in terms of resonating with their customers. But when you start talking about nostalgia and emotions again, and again thinking backwards to times of comfort, positive associations with nostalgia, that's hugely emotional. So if you think back, brands that do nostalgia really well, VW Beetle's one of them. Trying to think of nostalgic brands. Things from your childhood, brands from your childhood are really nostalgic. You generate positive emotions when you think about those particular brands. Random fact for you here. This is where really sorry everybody. This is where Laura and Luann say weird things. Crayola reformulated their crayons years ago, and the smell of the Crayola crayons went as part of the reformulation, and so many customers complained they had to find a way to put the old Crayola smell back into the new formulation of crayons, because people wanted that nostalgic smell of the Crayola crayons to stay. So there's something there as well about this legacy, heritage, nostalgia brand that I think we will see organisations capitalising on, because it imbues trust.
Yeah, it's the feel as well as the think, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
I think this is our challenge for future sessions, to get in some random facts that we've never shared with each other.
Challenge accepted. I've done crayons this time.
Yeah, I'll think of something for next time. We've been talking for over half an hour. We do say we try and keep these sessions to about half an hour. So let's wrap it up. Hopefully some of our ramblings resonated, some tips in there, just some things to think about. But next month, we're going to be back on the 13th of July.
We are.
Because we're going to spend 3 days together at the beginning of July.
We are. We're going to a conference together. I'm so excited. I've not actually seen you in person since pre-pandemic. So we're going to the Academy of Marketing conference at the beginning of next month, which is the key conference in the UK for marketing academics. And we also invite practitioners along. We talk about academic research and marketing education. It's a 3-day extravaganza. And Luann and I are both going to be there with other colleagues and learning loads about current thinking in all different areas of marketing. It's going to be great. So we'll hopefully share some insights from that next time.
Yeah, that will be the plan. We don't know what it's going to be yet, but that will be what we do. Thank you so much for those that have come and attended live. There's been some great chat and hellos, so good to see you. I will pop some links underneath this for you to have a look at later, and I'll also share the link for the next session. And we do also have a survey link, because we would love your feedback on this session, how you've found it. Is there something more we could talk about? Have you got any topic suggestions for us? So I will also pop that in there. Laura, I will see you in a couple of weeks, and see everyone else soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.